Hello everyone. In this video, we are going to be talking about how to convert a fraction into a decimal. We will also practice some rounding. There are multiple ways to do this. My recommended method is using the long division method. Also, if you can use a calculator, you could simply plug in 3 divided by 4 for part A, and that'll also give you your answer. But if you're forced to do it by hand, this is how you do it. For part A, we are going to set this up as a long division problem. So what that looks like is you put the numerator on the inside of the long division symbol and the denominator on the outside. Then you start the division process. Since we know that 4 cannot go into 3, we put a decimal both inside and outside of the division symbol. We can now add a 0, and we have 4 into 30. 4 goes into 30 7 times. Make sure you put it on the right side of the decimal. 4 times 7 is 28. And you subtract. That leaves you with 2. And you can keep adding zeros until either the number repeats or you find no remainder. So now we have 4 into 20. That goes in 5 times. 4 times 5 is 20, and subtracting leaves you with a remainder of 0. So 3 over 4 is exactly 0.75. You may also recognize this as 3/4 or 75 cents. For part B, we have 5 over 6. We will set up the problem in the exact same way. We will do long division, placing the numerator on the inside and the denominator on the outside. Knowing that 6 cannot go into 5, we add a decimal twice, add a 0, and now we have 6 into 50. 6 goes into 50 8 times, giving us 48. Subtracting gives us a 2. We add a 0, bring it down. 6 goes into 20 3 times, giving us 18. Subtracting gives us a 2. You'll notice again we add a 0. That gives us 20, which 6 goes into 3 times. 6 times 3 is 18. Subtracting that gives us a 2. And you'll notice this pattern will continue on and on and on. This is known as a repeating decimal because we will continue getting trailing 3's on our decimal. So we can write this several ways. We can write this as 0.833 with a bar over the top. That bar represents a repeating fraction. But our problem doesn't say to write it as a repeating fraction. It says write it and round to the nearest thousandth. So we have to understand what that means. Well, the thousandth place is going to be your third decimal place. The first is tenths, then hundredths, then thousandths. So we want to round to that third decimal place. Let's erase this briefly. So since we have 333 repeated, we need to round to the third decimal place. We look to the right of that decimal and see, is that number 5 or greater or less than 5? If it's less than 5, we typically round down and drop the last number. If it's 5 or greater, we will round up. So, to the right of our rounding place, we have a 3, which tells us we round down and we get rid of the 3. So our rounded answer is 0.833. Next, for part C, we have a mixed number, 1 and 2 fifths. There's a couple ways to do this. I'll show you two. The first is you take the whole number, which is 1 in this case, and you set it off to the side, and just don't worry about it for now. Then you look at the fraction, which is 2 over 5, and you do that in the same way we did previous, which is going to be long division with a 5 and a 2. We'll place the decimal, add a 0, and 5 goes into 20 4 times. 5 times 4 is 20, subtracting that as a 0. So now we have our decimal of 0.4. But don't forget, we also have the whole 1. So we can combine those together, and it's 1.4. That is the first way that we can do part C. The second way we can do part C is by turning the mixed number into an improper fraction. From our previous videos, we know that we take the whole number as 1 2/5. We take the whole number and you multiply it by the denominator and you add it to the numerator. So that'll give us 1 times 5, which is 5 plus 2, 7. 7 over 5. Now, since we have a fraction, we can do long division. Again, the denominator goes on the outside, the numerator goes on the inside. 5 goes into 7 once, giving us a 5. We can subtract it out and we get a 2. Now we have 5 into 2. We know that that won't work all by itself, so we will have to add a decimal, just like our previous problems, placing a 0, dropping it down. 5 goes into 20 4 times. 5 times 4 is 20. Subtracting it out, and you get 0. So our final answer is 1.4. And you will notice this is the same as the previous way we solved this problem. Now for part D, we have 5 over 3. This is very similar to our previous parts, so I recommend you pause this video and give it a shot. For the solution, we will start with long division, putting the numerator on the inside, the denominator on the outside. 3 goes into 5 once. 1 times 3 is 3. Subtracting, that gives us a 2. We will have to place a decimal, so we can bring down a 0. That gives us 20. 3 goes into 20 6 times, giving us 18. 20 minus 18 gives us 2. Adding another 0. And you'll notice a repeating pattern. 3 and 6 gives us 18. Subtracting gives us a 2. So our answer will be 1.666 repeating. Again, we have to round to that third decimal place. So what that looks like in this case is we have 6's. We want to look to the right. In this problem, 6 is greater than 5, so that tells us to round up. So we drop the last term, and the 6 becomes a 7. So our final answer will be 1.667. That's all for this video. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments. Thank you for watching.